Well, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the beautiful world you are. Welcome to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. And our beautiful Jessie Zabota again with our Patreons here. Thank you so much. And we're doing our book club of 5 Minutes of Grief with God. And this is part 2. And I think it's such a well-timed exercise. This is, I really feel that. As I've said before, grief is not just necessarily losing someone physically. I think right now the world is grieving. So many things we are seeing, so many things we're hearing. Families split apart, friendships torn apart, isolation, segregation. And I always believe everything is beautiful, and I love to see God in everything. So in the deepest moments of grief, I do believe God is there and just waiting for us to let that grief go and just turn it into whatever the joy that is available to us through that experience. And I really enjoy this, Jess, because I think your book really speaks a lot to that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. And thank you so much for everyone for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll take a few minutes. I'm going to try to go through 3 chapters today, and I'll read them, and then I'll kind of, in between each one, just open up a little bit of time for discussion and maybe share a little more. So chapter 4, how can I comfort you? And this chapter was really written, as I found myself having a lot of people come around me right after Josiah died. A lot of people were wanting to know, how could they help? How could they comfort? And so this is in response to that. How can I comfort you? This is one of the most asked questions in grief, yet one that no one ever has an answer to. Does anyone really know the right way to navigate grief? As a chaplain, I often feel like a fish fumbling outside of the water when I have to support others. I want to say words that will comfort and bring them peace. I want to be with them and make them feel supported. I want to help them navigate the checklist process, taking care of their loved one's estate, funeral, and burial. However, I found that everyone is different. There are no pat answers. There is no checklist you can follow that leads to everyone being happy in the end. Every moment has a different answer. What serves to reassure one family or individual may be devastating for another. So, how do we love those in grief? The greatest tool I have found is prayer and trusting the Lord to guide you. Don't be afraid to ask Him, Lord, what can I do to minister to this one grieving in this moment? When I ask this question, I never know where He will lead me. One time I had a large family present as the patient was passing. The patient was uncomfortable, so I began to sing. The family had overheard me, so after the patient passed, they asked me to sit with them and continue to sing. This was what brought peace to their souls in that moment. During another passing, the patient loved the song, The Yellow Rose of Texas. I worked at the VA hospital, which is a very difficult hospital if you need something on the internet. But I got the tech guys to make me a copy of the song on a CD so I could play it in the patient's room. As I stood with the family next to the patient's bed, suddenly the son said, "Look, chaplain, look at his feet. He's dancing." I looked at the foot of the bed, and sure enough, his feet were tapping on the ends of the bed. What he needed in that moment was to leave this world and enter the next through dance. What his son needed was the laughter of seeing his father exiting this world with joy. As I'm going through this, I know there are decisions I must make. What do I need to get through these moments? Loved friends tell me they are with me, but there are times I feel so distanced, even when they are right next to me. The pastor, the mortician, family all ask me to make decisions. They ask me what I need, but I don't know what I need. I can't think. I want to give answers, but I struggle to bring them to my lips and share them. Is it all right to just say, I need time? I feel like I do not have time. In death, there is a rush. I understand the urgency needed to finalize things. Arrangements are made, bodies laid to rest. But in the midst of the whirlwind, I would just like time. Time to breathe, time to feel, time to process, time to decide what I want in these moments. Can you wait for me to share what I want? I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be surrounded by silence or crying. I don't want to eat. I'm hungry and I know I need to, but I don't want to choose. Could you just put together some food, sit down next to me, let me be a part of the fellowship? I want to be touched. I want to feel a gentle hand upon my back. I want to know you are there with me, but I'm not into the hold me and squeeze me type type thing at this moment. Please don't make me keep eye contact while you stare into my eyes, telling me how sorry you are for my loss. A simple smile will do. It means a lot to me that you came a long distance just to be there with me. Please sit down next to me. Hold my hand. Tell me your favorite memories of Josiah. I want to laugh. I want to think about the good things. I want to remember him. And if a few tears flow, have some tissues to share. That is what I want in these moments. So with that, there was a lot of, just first time raw processing of, a range of feelings through that process. The grieving process can be a really difficult one to navigate. For those here who have gone through grief, I would just maybe show a hand. How many of you have, how many of you do those feelings resonate with? Yeah. And so, with this chapter, I think it's really good that I've noticed that the feelings don't stop after the initial things are done. And so, I encourage everybody that if you're still having those feelings, give them a way to be heard, a way to express them. And that could be just simply journaling. Um, Journal what you need, what you want. And then, I know so many people are good hearted that even though, our friends may not be right with us like they were during the times of service, if afterwards we still have needs, write out those feelings and then say to yourself, how can somebody help me meet these needs? And don't be afraid to reach out to your friends and share that. Say, this is what I need. Today I just need a listening ear. I just need to cry. If that friend's there, say, okay, this is a hold me day. One of those days I just want to be held. I just want to cry. Bring a box of tissue. Let's find a quiet spot and do some grief work. So those assignments are always good. I know like one of the biggest things I feel is that once the initial grieving is done, that there isn't time to continue to grieve. The world keeps going and it feels like, that when we step back and into that place of grief, we fear that others are just so busy. We don't want to inconvenience them. We don't want to call them back to that moment of our grief. But we need to not be afraid to do that and to take care of ourselves. So Alette, were there any questions, thoughts? Please feel free to share from your own experiences as well.
I'll open it up. You know, losing my dad at the beginning of the year, watching the hospital kill him. There's a lot of, you know, there's the 5 steps or whatever of grief that you go through, and I don't know what order I'm going in. I think I'm just stuck in like anger and needing closure, because I want to see this whole thing. I want to hold people accountable, and I want people to like know that they did wrong. And so, you know, that's where I feel like I'm stuck right now with my grief, and I have to be careful, because that anger and needing that closure that's with this just one topic of losing my dad starts to put its tentacles in other parts of my life, like, you know, with dealing with my husband or my daughter and feeling agitation because I'm grieving and trying to like still, you know, move on with life and everything else. But, you know, I know communicating is very important. Hey, I'm having a hard day. I'm sorry. That kind of stuff is very important. But I think that's just where I'm stuck right now. And so I just keep laying it at the feet of Jesus, because I don't know of anything else to do.
Yeah.
But that closure is the hardest thing for me right now.
And I hear you need that. So there are things that you can do, you know, to get some of that closure. You know, I believe you can write. You know, I know we've talked a little bit behind the scenes, but you have a case. So you can write that out. You can put it in affidavit form, which we can talk about more later. And you can get that turned in. But you also can write that case out. You can mail that to the ombudsman or the JACO who oversee that hospital. You also can send that to the news station. You can send a copy to those in the hospital administration as well. And, you know, that might be a way where you feel some of that justice, that at least they're aware of your feelings, they're aware that you know the truth. And that can be a good place to start with some of that.
You are 100% right. And I have no excuses other than just that numb kind of like not being able to find my words yet, because I'm still angry and I don't want to like write all the wrong things. I want it to like really like gut punch them with my words, you know? And so I am 100% on board with that, and finding the right time and just letting the Lord just kind of flow through me so the right things are said, because I'm a lot like my mom, where if I'm not careful, like, you know, I'm just. So
this week you're going to work on gut punching. You're going to find a wall. And as you gut punch, you're going to, you know, find your words and then write them down piece by piece. And
well, and journaling, I mean, that's something I used to do. And it's like, you know, I mentioned to you about my creativity feeling like it's just gone, and because of other emotions I've allowed to in my life. And so that was something, like I said, I enjoyed doing. And I have books from my past of my journals, and it's like the last 10 years of my life I have no journals. And that the last 10 years of my life have been the most difficult of ever. So it's interesting how the enemy has closed me up. I've allowed that, you know, and that's something I'm working on through this whole process of grief, because
Yeah,
like
and now that you recognize that, you can release it. You can
Yeah.
make that shift and that change.
right.
Very good.
Yeah. And
So
like Chantelle
anybody,
said,
oh,
oh, sorry. I was just
nope,
gonna
go
say
right ahead.
one last thing, like Chantelle said, it's not just death, that, grief is many, many different things. And so yeah. Thanks, Jessie.
I'm glad that you said that, because it's true. It can be a loss of a job, it can be loss of finances, your car, your pet. Um, it's a loss of anything. It can be trauma that comes through different, whether it's loss of health, loss of your freedom somehow, if you have a health condition where no longer you can drive. It can be a lot of things, even relationships. If you had a close friend or family members that, you were really close to, and all of a sudden things have happened. It may not even be, division, strife, or negative things. It might simply be that they had to move or relocate. And so that there's a change in that relationship. So loss and change can all add to that grieving process. Hi, anybody else want to share something? This?
I think you're good to go to next chapter. Thank you for
All
that.
right.
That was really great. Insightful. I love that.
All right. Chapter 5. I can do this.
To ask people what they need.
Go ahead.
I think in this whole process. Have I frozen? Did I freeze?
Yes, you did.
I think you did. Yep.
Here I'm back.
All right. Let's go on
Okay.
to chapter 5 here. I can
Yeah.
do this. Take 5 minutes today and sit in the Lord's presence. Be intentional. You are investing in you, in something that you need. Decide on a time when you will come. Think about the spot where you would like to sit or stand for 5 minutes. Know that there is no right way or wrong way to grieve. These moments are just between you and the Lord. Give yourself permission to grieve before Him in the place that you choose. Are you ready? Are you willing to lay your heart bare before Him? You need this, so let's do it. What do you want to tell Him? Let it all pour out. So that chapter was meant to really be a little assignment. And, as I've mentioned in the first club, this book idea really started when I had a close friend that I worked with at the hospice who had lost her father. And she was having a really difficult time between work and family life and everything going on, to find that time in that space to grieve. And she was really struggling in her grief, and it was affecting everything else in her life. And so the Lord one day gave me that idea of just 5 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you these little assignments every day. And your job is just to be faithful to take those 5 minutes and let the Lord begin to work in that grief. So, one of the things that I realized even in my own grief is that there was this little voice in the back of my head that would just continuously say, I can't do this. And, whether, I guess there was a lot of things maybe behind that, that at the heart of it, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to face the grief. I didn't want to feel the pain or feel that outlet, I guess. When you start to process the grief, there's a relief that comes. But for whatever reason, and maybe it was control. I wanted to hold on to all that tension and pressure. I don't know why, but that was just the way that it was. So, but I know it's not good. It's not healthy for us to hold on to that pressure. So, how do we get our feet moving? How do we get moving towards that place where we start processing? We have to be intentional. We have to say, I can do this. And bigger than that, I will do this. So feel free if you guys would like to open up and share anything from your own process, or if you have questions or thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I would just say, in my moments of extreme grief, there was nobody else I could talk to except God. So that exercise of sitting with God, with giving yourself that 5 minutes, for me, it came naturally in those moments, but it's the only place where you really get answers. God has give us all the tools and everything to be like the most amazing human being we can be. But at that extreme moments, sitting with God with your grief there's no other answer for that, because it's only in that sitting with God for that 5. I love this exercise. God is always at that moment when you sit and you actually connect with God, God will always give you that solution or lift you up just in a moment. You can just feel that presence. I mean, when you're going through grief, we don't want answers. We don't want it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be good. That's not what we want. We just want to sit with it and feel it and just feel that we're not alone with it, and no better presence than God to help us just move through that grief. So it's
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's so true. I don't know, I hope I'm not breaking up again. My internet's supposed to be fine. I'm not sure why it's not. But I think what you were saying earlier, what's so important is to ask people what they need, let them, instead of assuming, well, I'm sure
I think she froze again,
they
but
want lunch and dessert. And okay, carry on.
no, we caught the end. I agree. You were saying rather than assuming what they need, to ask. And it's important to bring that to ourselves in the process as well. To just take a moment to pause and say, what do I need today? And then, whether it's writing it down or making a plan to go ahead and do what you need to do, but make sure that you're meeting those needs. Sometimes, it's hard to find words, but even if you can find one word, the questions that I use in my self-talk that really help me find those words are, what do I need? What do I want? What do I need or want from others? So, I'll put, as I do that, then you can start to put the single words underneath those questions. And then from there, you can develop that into a strategic plan. If you need touch, if you need to be held, well, then the next step is, what friend or individual is available to me who I can get that need met through. It can be really difficult, like especially if you're at work and you work in a place where, you know, that may not necessarily be readily available to you. But I encourage people, even if you are at a place like that, if you have a close coworker, just say, hey, like, I need a hug today. Okay. Would you be able to just give me a hug for a minute? I really need it. And we need to not be afraid to express our needs and our wants.
Yeah, I agree. We've become so scared to express our vulnerability with each other. And yet sharing that brings it just bonds us so closely.
Hmm.
I agree. Go ask for a hug.
Yeah. So, all right, let's go on to chapter 6 here. First moments. So this was kind of just a recap of first moments in that grieving process. The day I found out Josiah had died, I packed up the car with my other kids and started heading to the state we needed to go to for his funeral and burial. Looking back now, I am thankful that the drive was so long, and I feel that helped us as a family to process before we arrived. One of my sons wanted to listen to Josiah's song playlist as we drove. There were songs on there that made us laugh. Oh, sorry, my thing skipped ahead. Forgive me here. Um, there were songs on there that made us laugh as we remembered Josiah's spunky, carefree, humorous attitude. Then one of the songs came on, and it was an epic Celtic orchestra sounding piece. Jonah and I looked at each other and said, "That's the one. That's the one we want to play at Josiah's service." In these moments, it's important to work together to create meaningful memories. The day we arrived at the state we were traveling to, I was informed that I had to go deal with some unexpected expenses. These unexpected details are things that most do not think about families in grief having to deal with. One of the first items was to pay the car accident tow bill. That meant that I had to choose. Did I want to see the vehicle? What sombering moments we face in grief? I don't know which was worse, the thoughts and pictures of the event that began to formulate in one's mind, or the images attached to feelings of what Josiah's last moments were like. Pause to breathe. It's okay, we can entertain these thoughts for a moment. It helped as they surfaced to turn them into prayers. As I saw the completely wrecked vehicle, I knew there was no way he would have survived. Then came the relief and the thankfulness. Are these emotions wrong? No, I believe they are the normal reaction. Don't let guilt bring you down. Don't feel bad for what you feel. Acknowledge it and give it to the Lord. Lord, I'm relieved that you took Josiah home. I'm grateful that he did not survive this. Yeah, so that probably was one of the hardest things. Was, all of us, we had me and all his siblings and some of the friends, and together we went and looked at the vehicle and actually had to clean it out for last things that were his. But it's like when you see just how devastating, how horrific the accident was, and other pieces begin to flood in as you're putting everything together. So I had already talked to the policeman, who was a good friend of ours, who was one of the first responders to the accident and had been the first to get to Josiah. And, his only words to me were just, I felt for heartbeat, but he was gone. And he said, I just knew, I couldn't do CPR and try to get him back. He said, I just knew I needed to let him go. And I was thankful that he had made that call, especially as all the pieces came together. I was thankful that, say they had brought Josiah back, he would have been looking at extensive surgeries, recovery. He might not have even had any real quality of life. And so I was glad that I didn't have to deal with all of that. It was kind of very cut, dry. It would have been much worse if he had survived. it definitely would have been life-changing in different ways. But it's good to think back and to process those things. And, I like in that chapter that I gave myself permission, permission to not feel guilty for good thoughts, that I was happy that the Lord took him home. I was thankful that we didn't have to, go through all sorts of recoveries, surgeries, financial stuff with all of that. And it's okay to give yourself permission to express those feelings and those thoughts in grief. So I'll open up for anyone who has thoughts they want to share, or I would be interested. Have any of you struggled in your grief, feeling guilty when you have good thoughts?
I'm just trying to figure out if I can be heard or seen.
We see you and we hear you.
Okay, well, let me just put it out to any of our ladies or gent. I was trying to think people. No, there's two gentlemen, ladies, so that was my hesitation. Anyone would like to maybe give some feedback or share something with us? John, nice to see you again. Hello. Okay, carry on.
I was just going to say, I haven't felt guilty with good thoughts, because I think that's the only thing that's sustaining me, is that peace of knowing my dad is in the best place he could be, and knowing what the Lord told me, showed me, and the peace I felt when I went to see him in ICU and say goodbye. I mean, he was lifeless. The hospital had, ruined his body with all the medications. The ventilator blew his lung. His organs were shutting down. I mean, like you, Jessie, if he would have come back, how would his quality of life been, And
yeah.
So like the Lord told me, he said, give me 3 days and I'll give you the 4th. So in those 3 days, I fasted. I believed he was going to pull my dad out. I believed all the positive things, and then that 4th day, that was the day I got to go say bye to my dad. So he gave me the 4th day. He stuck to his word. Now, did I get what I thought I was going to get? No, I didn't get my dad back. But my last text to him, forgive me for my language, but it was the truth. I said, my last words to him before he went on the vent was, Biden is an asshole. So I was like stuck with what am I, those were my last words. And so just getting to go in there, knowing what the Lord had told me. And even my husband said when I left that room, like there was just like this, and I felt it, peace just came over me. And within a couple hours, he was gone. But just going back to it like that, there's so many what ifs. What could we have done different? I think that's the guilt. That's the part that eats at me, is what could I have done different? But I can't, you can't live with that. You can't think on that. I'm just thankful for the peace of eternal life.
Yeah.
Without that, I think I would still be in turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much.
Yeah,
Jen.
no, I agree. And it's, what do you do with all those what ifs? They do eat away at you. And I kind of have a phrase for myself where I just take them and chuck them out the window. It's like, I don't want you, bye-bye, not going to entertain you. I'm going to let you go. And I'm just going to stand in what I know, what the Lord showed me. And, that helps. And there's a lot of unexpected what ifs you can get, and they can come after. We had, it was almost almost like 7-8 months after everything, where one day I had, what would you call her, an individual who worked with the hospital, and they called me to, you know, to say that, well, you haven't paid your bill for Josiah. And I was like, what bill for Josiah? And they're like, for, the CAT scan and the brain scan that we did. And it's like, if he's dead, though, there should be no cost. You can't, all that was supposed to be taken care of. And we got into this discussion. It was like, wait a second, are you telling me he wasn't dead after the accident? you know? And so that brings up everything, because then you're like, okay, what's really going on here? Ended up, she hadn't got the memos, I guess. And, so I had to work through that. And then, I did appreciate the chaplain, or I'm sorry, it wasn't the chaplain, it was the mortician who called later, who said, we got the tox screen and that was negative. So that was good to know. That kind of gave some closure that, he hadn't been drinking or there were no drugs detected, which we already knew because he wasn't somebody who engaged in those things, but it was good to have that finality. So, we have to be kind of resilient in this grieving process, and that goes with our family too. It's hard when you have others that are grieving with you at the same time, because not only are you having to handle the load of your grief, but you're dealing with their grief too. And for us, that long drive was good because each of us got to express how we needed to grieve. Like I mentioned in the chapter, my one son, for him, it was listening to music. Him and Josiah would always be sharing songs, and when they played songs and went out together, they would be rocking in the car and dancing and doing all sorts of weird boy things that they do. My boys are pretty silly. Like, they think it's really hilarious to yell random phrases at people as they drive by them in the car. And sometimes they'll even do things like chuck cupcakes or Twinkies at them. Be like, hey, you need a cupcake? They'll just toss a cupcake in somebody's car to, it's one of those random things, and they think it's funny. And I'm like, no, you can't be doing that. But him and Josiah used to do a lot of that. So for him, the music was something that helped. And then for him to get to help for the service to choose which songs were played, that was what he needed in that process. One of my other sons, and it was just so funny because it's totally unlike him. Him and Josiah would fight a lot, but he was just, he had heard me talking to the funeral home, and they were asking for permission to start the cremation. And he was like, don't you dare cremate that body. He's like, I need to see it. I need to see it, and I need to see it before I can move on in life. And I'm sitting here like, what 12-year-old says this? So we had to put everything on hold. And then that meant, nobody else in the family wanted to go see the body. So it ended up being me and just my one son and the pastor. And that was hard, after we saw the vehicle and then, saw all the damage to the body. That was really, really tough, but that's what he needed, you know. So what were some of the things that you guys needed looking back in those first moments?
The person that you
Love
love back.
present.
In those first moments, you want them back. You can't, you're like, pinch me. Like, is this really happening? Like,
Yeah.
Mm. I'm very unsure whether I'm frozen or not. So I've decided to put my camera off because.
We can hear you now.
Okay. I think, if you don't mind, I'd like to just say something here as well. I think for me, it was just one of the first things I needed was just understanding and space at the same time. Space to be a bitch from hell, space to be angry and not take it personally, and for my friends and family not to take it personally, just to express my emotions in the way that I needed to. And to know that people were there, but not encroaching on me. So I wanted that. I didn't want them not there, but I didn't want them breathing down my neck either. So it was that happy balance for me, which I think was so important. What you said earlier on was asking people what they need. How can I help you now? I don't want to impose on you. And tell me what you need from me. Shall I call you? Shall I message you? Shall I just pop in randomly? What feels good for you? And I think then, I always like the feeling of having a choice. Maybe that's just me, but I definitely feel like I need to have a choice in life. Because if you're going to bombard me with what you think is your desire for me, it's not going to end well in any area of my life. So that for me really was. And just checking in, and I think also what is very important in this process, especially with death, is that I found within the first 3 months, and I think generally with people as well, you get a lot of support then. There's a lot of hustle and bustle around you, especially that first month. But after that, it kind of dies down and it gets lonely. And that's the time I think I really started grieving. And it's really nice to actually have people remember that to still even 6 months, a year later, remember, for me, what was really great was when they remembered the date of his death, when friends said, I'm thinking about you today. They remember his birthday. And friends said, I'm thinking about you today. That for me, just those little gestures were very important. Just kindness, thoughtfulness, I think, is more than anything. So I think
I was really good. I agree. I was doing really, really good until it was a couple months ago when one of my co-hosts asked me, or I think we were just simply talking about the veterans. And I said something and I started talking about squares with prayers. And all of a sudden, all the memories of, doing the ministry with Josiah, crocheting for the homeless veterans, all of that came flooding back. And it was like, man, what a great ministry partner he was,
Yeah.
And I hadn't grieved that yet.
Yeah.
So.
And I think we will always have those moments. I don't know if you guys listened to some of the stuff, and I think I've mentioned it on Catherine's show yesterday, and maybe, I'm not sure on one of the others, but my partner was killed in a hijacking at the end of 96. And I always knew something was dodgy because where they were that night, there was a lot of them together. And the guy that actually pulled the trigger was connected to some of his work friends. So I always knew there was a connection of what happened, and I wasn't quite sure what. And about 2 to 3 weeks ago, it became clear to me through a process of events and speaking to people and realizing things, he was actually taken out in a hit because he was a very highly qualified engineer. He was very bright, very young, a great achiever. And he was introduced into the secret societies. And I understand now why I didn't know then, because it wouldn't have made sense to me. And it's only been now, like almost 25 years later, that digging in these rabbit holes, when I've understood how these things work, that this was revealed to me. So God really has amazing ways of making things happen and allowing things to be revealed at the perfect time. But what I'm saying there was that it was such a big shock again. It kind of took me right back there. And it was also, I know he was betrayed by his best friend and one of his big bosses. So that reality was quite a bitter pill to swallow, but it made me get closure, complete closure. I've not had closure for 25 years. And that did. So as crazy as what things can sometimes be, I do believe we receive things when we are ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that was me ready.
What was that last part, Chantelle?
I just said that was me ready.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I think I owe everyone on this platform a huge thank you, because all of you have played such an integral role in my healing. This could not have happened if I hadn't taken this path. And of course, along with Mornay, Jessie, you've been such an amazing role in my life as well. Thea, sitting there in the middle at the top, who's such a star, the one who does all our research and just as a whiz in the background there. And every one of you on the platform, you know, your messages, your encouragement. It helps us on our journey to reveal these horrible things and find, you know, as our slogan says, we shine light on evolving times. And the light doesn't always reveal the pretty things. The light reveals the very shitty things too. So this is one of those things that for me was very necessary. And I know that it could not have been revealed to me had it not been for us taking this platform and the road we have and the support we have from each and every one of you. So I really am extremely grateful. And thank you that I can share this today as well. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. That's good. And I think that's good too, you know, is that it's easier to think on just the good things than the difficult or the hard things, especially if there were, you know, issues in the relationship. Like Lana, you brought up, you know, last words that, you know, so it's good to give yourself time to even process those more difficult things. And that can, I guess with that, the emotions, the unresolved, what's another word? Sometimes those are the things that we don't have closure to. And with that, you know, my recommendation is that with those harder things, come to that space where you can just say to yourself, I forgive you. You know, I forgive you that not everything was perfect. Not, you know, maybe there were unkind words, maybe there were unkind actions, maybe there was an estranged relationship for many, many years. You know, but give yourself that space to say, I forgive you. I let it go. And, you know, bring that before the Lord, bring that confession. And as you do that, I believe a lot of that relief, maybe there's shame, let it go. don't be afraid to chuck it out the window and say, I'm not going to be held captive in this negativity. So, well, I'll leave a few minutes here. Would anybody else like to say anything in closing? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and pray and close up for today.
I would like to. My name is Kat Foster, and I'm kind of new to finding you guys. I was signed up for Miami, but I wasn't able to get there from in St. Augustine right now. Chantelle, it really means a lot to hear. Like, the first time I was ever, I think, on a live was yesterday, of all days, the morning talk thing. But hearing what you said about your experience with your partner that was set up, and then hearing your experience today again has really resonated with me. I haven't done the healing yet from severe abuse, and I don't want to ramble on. I'm post brain injury, and I have basically nonstop migraines and vertigo. And I'm completely alone.
I think, Kat, you froze up just a little bit there. Since that was your last last words, we'll add some encouragement and say you're not alone, that you've got us here with you. And I'm glad that you're opening up, that you're starting to share. So we'll hope that you hear that through the freeze. When you come back on, we'll just say we're here standing with you. There's a lot of good people who can hear your story, and we got a lot of time to work through stuff. So
Indeed, we do. Thank you for that. I'm sorry she popped out there, but I'm sure she will catch up with the recordings as well. Yes, it's such a crazy time, and it's just so good to know that we can actually just connect universally. So just to know, if you guys want to reach out, let's reach out and just offer each other some support and just walk each other home through some challenging times. Is there anyone else who would just like to maybe share something before Jess ends off in prayer? Okay. Well, then I'm going to say thank you so much to everyone for joining. Beautiful, beautiful moment, beautiful time. Thank you, Jess. Always appreciate you. And maybe you can close us in prayer.
yeah, absolutely. Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we are not alone, that above all things, that you are with us, and that through every moment of this process of grief, that you are taking our hand and walking beside us. I thank you for the ups and the downs. I thank you for friends who listen. I thank you that you give us exactly what we need in those moments, that there is no lack of having those needs met, that if we ask, that there will be a way. And I just firmly believe that. And Lord, as difficult as grief can be, we just know that you are the one who raises us back to that place of new life. And so my prayer over everybody listening today is that as we walk through this grief, that we would allow the things that are not healthy to just be put to death, and that we would embrace the abundance, the goodness that you've given us, and that we can trust that as we walk through this process, that you will restore us. You will bring us back to that place of peace, that you will bring us to a place where once again we are having joy and laughter. You bring us back to that place where we can feel safe again and we can feel comfort. And so I just thank you that you are the one who restores and redeems our time. And we just ask that you would continue to direct that all the days of our lives, and that goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives. We pray this in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you, Jessie. I'm going to switch my camera on now and see if I can just see everyone before I go. I'm here. Okay, guys. Okay, Kat's just entered again, so maybe, okay, there she is. So we can just say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to probably one more, Jess. Would it be one more?
One or two more. Let me quick see. Yeah, I think two more.
Two more,
Two more.
yes.
Okay, we'll let you guys know the dates and stuff again. Thank you so much. Kat, so nice to see you back. I'm sorry
Hey,
you popped.
I'm sorry. I don't know when I was cut off because I had my eyes closed, and I'm sorry I was rambling. I just want you guys to know that you've been such an encouragement to me during a time that I really needed it. And the lady that you know feels guilt about the last thing she said to her father is Biden's an asshole. I mean, give yourself permission to see the humor in that. That's really fun. I mean, you know what I mean as well. Maybe that would help. I don't know. I'm certainly not a good one to give advice right now. I just love y'all, and I'm so glad to have found you, and I'm praying for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you.
Praying for your healing, Kat. Really am praying for your healing.
Indeed.
Keep seeking the Lord.
Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll catch you back in a couple of weeks. God bless you all. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.